All right. Meanwhile, the White House is trying to exert unprecedented pressure on journalists, too, now taking the extraordinary step of subpoenaing multiple New York Times reporters and forcing them to testify before a grand jury this Wednesday, all over their coverage of the security concerns surrounding President Trump's new Air Force One, that $400 million gift donated by the Qatari government, which then cost even more to retrofit for presidential use. MS Now reported the very same concerns. The New York Times is condemning the move and stepping up to provide aggressive legal support for its journalists, while the Department of Justice says the, quote, reporters are not the targets, those leaking classified information are. Let's bring in staff writer at The Atlantic and MS Now political analyst Ashley Parker and former U.S. attorney and MS Now legal analyst Joyce Vance. Joyce, I'm going to begin with you. Does it seem here like the government has a sound legal argument to issue these subpoenas? I mean, some of these journalists had people appear at their door. Is any of this normal?
Well, let's start there. The fact that these subpoenas were served on these journalists at home rather than in their office is a red flag that this is about harassment and intimidation, not legitimate investigation. You know, the ground rules, Antonia, under a 1972 landmark case, Brownsburg, the government does have the ability to subpoena journalists, and they technically don't have a broad-based privilege that they can assert. But that's not how this plays out in the real world for a couple of reasons. For one thing, DOJ policy has long favored negotiation, not confrontation with the press, for all of the obvious First Amendment reasons. And more importantly, even that seminal Supreme Court case recognizes that law enforcement has to have a legitimate purpose in issuing the subpoenas. Here they say that that's disseminating information through leaks, that they want to look into that. But the government acted so quickly within days that it's practically impossible. They could have looked internally to see if they could discover the information without subpoenaing journalists. I think we're gearing up for yet another fight in court for this administration.
Ashley, I want your thoughts on two things. The first is I know that you know some of these reporters personally, as many of us do. We talk to them about their major stories, their incredible reporting on a pretty regular basis. But then also I want your thoughts on Jay Clayton, who is the person who issued these subpoenas. He's right now at SDNY, but he's, of course, Trump's choice to, in the future, take over Bill Pulte's current position and leading 18 different intelligence agencies. And he was sort of perceived as someone who was a better pick than Pulte. There are Democrats who are eager to have him as the replacement. So I want your sort of big picture reaction to this and what this tells us about what may be coming.
Sure. So on the first question, you know, this absolutely has a chilling effect on journalists. The first thing I did was I looked at the story, I looked at those bylines, and I thought, this story is airtight. I have worked with almost all of those reporters at the Times or at the Post. They're fantastic reporters. So I was like, they have no concerns that they somehow got something wrong. But again, that's not what this subpoena is about. It's about intimidating these reporters and putting them in the awful, you know, the White House, the Department of Justice put out a statement saying it's not about the reporters, it's about their sources. Well, that's very much about the reporters because that's how reporters work. That's how we do our jobs. And our first mission is to protect our sources. So these reporters are in a terrible position by design from the administration. My last thought, though, is that the Times has a fantastic legal team from top to bottom. This is an institution. This is the institution you would want behind you in a fight like this. So for a tough situation, the Times is as well positioned as it can possibly be. And, you know, what it says about Trump's new nominee is that this seems to be someone, again, who is willing to do his bidding, do the president's bidding, do exactly what the president wants, whether or not there is precedent, whether or not it is problematic and controversial. And so I think one of the questions is this the sort of behavior and approach Jay Clayton will carry into this top national intelligence position, when what you want is someone who is measured and objective and not out, you know, to be the president's fixer, but to actually do what is best for this nation when it comes to protecting it.
Joyce, walk me through what would happen if these journalists were, in fact, or are in the coming days, brought in front of a grand jury.
Right. So they'll be taken in front of the grand jury. Their lawyers cannot accompany them. Those proceedings occur in secret. They will be questioned by prosecutors in front of the grand jury, and they will do so under oath and under the penalty of perjury, which means that the issue that bubbles up pretty quickly is whether or not they will be forced to reveal their sources. You may remember that Judith Miller was held in custody for almost 11 months for failing to reveal her sources, refusing to reveal them, protecting that baseline guarantee that the press can do its job and report because it's willing to protect confidentiality. That's the confrontation we're likely to see happen later this week in court, unless a judge quashes these subpoenas before the compliance with them is required.
Ashley, you know, in 2016, the World Press Freedom Index had the United States in 41st place. Already a number that maybe many people would argue the U.S. should have been a bit higher on the list there. It is now at 64th. How at risk do you think the free press is in this country right now?
And again, this is very deliberate by design from President Trump and his administration on down. You know, I started covering then candidate Trump in 2015. And one thing I quickly realized was I thought if I was an alien who had arrived on planet Earth, I would think there were three political parties: the Trump Republicans, the Democrats, and the fake news media, because that is how Trump messaged and set the media up and attacked us. Oftentimes, he would put the media in a pen. And to be clear, the media is always in a pen, no matter what candidate you're covering. But normally you're sort of in the back of the room. He would put us in a pen in the middle of these huge rallies. And, you know, almost one of his talking points, one of his rally riffs was to call us out, was to attack members of the media by name. I remember especially some of the people who were more recognizable on TV. They had to get security details. And this was 2015, 2016. We're now a decade in. It's by design and it's problematic.
Ashley Parker and Joyce Vance, thank you.